Hello, I'm Geoff A Wilson, author of fantasy books, psychological novels, short stories and dystopian thrillers. Welcome to my YouTube channel. In 2019 I retired from my job as a professor in geography at the University of Plymouth in the UK and I've become a full-time writer. Here are the books I've written so far, which can all be purchased on Amazon. In this introductory video I would like to talk about what motivates me to write, how I write and what my publication strategy is. In other short videos on this channel I talk about individual books, what motivated me to write each book, what the story is about and which other authors influenced me. In these videos I also mention what kind of storyline I'm using, how I developed the characters and what I found most difficult but also enjoyed most when writing my books. I hope that this introductory video will not only be interesting to existing and potential readers, but also to other authors keen to hear about the writing and publishing experience of writers like myself. So, what motivates me to write novels? I've always written stories. Even as a child I wrote many stories and drew comics, mostly fantasy stories about imaginary worlds. As an academic I just simply continued what I loved doing, writing books and articles. Over my career I published 10 academic books and more than 100 academic articles and book chapters for an academic audience. Since I retired in 2019 I've written novels. This is very different from academic writing. I actually find it easier to write a novel as the story unfolds in my head rather than having to rely on real and accurate sources, although I usually have to do some research for every book I write. With novels I can let my imagination run free and write whatever I want on every possible topic and storyline, which is one of the most creative acts one can imagine. I absolutely love it. The ideas for my books come from many sources. In most cases there are ideas I've had in my head for a long time. In others I'm inspired by other books I read or indeed by movies I watch. As you will see from my books I'm particularly interested in psychological themes, for example what influences people to think what they think, or the complexities of child-adult relationships, or the difficulties of social interactions between people. I'm also writing fantasy stories and dystopian novels that focus on imaginary worlds, but often they also touch on psychological themes that explore the complex interactions between the different characters in my books. So, how do I write? First of all, every author writes differently, so this is very important. There is no correct way of book writing. The way I write is that I develop a story in my head first, usually the basic elements of a story, the threads of which are then interwoven later as the story unfolds. Sometimes I write out the plot of a story in advance, make constant adjustments until I'm happy with the storyline, make sure that there are enough twists and turns that keep the reader in suspense, and then map out the chapter structure. I do scribble down notes on paper to remind me of key characters, dates, some ideas about parts of the story that will come later, but on the whole I work in a relatively unstructured way and just let my imagination flow. Although the basic building blocks are there when I start a book, I often do not exactly know where a story will take me, and most of the time I actually do not know what the ending will be like when I start a book. As the story unfolds and becomes more complex, I often then have to go back to other parts of the story and make changes, amend the storyline accordingly and make sure everything fits together. But on the whole I write quite large chunks of the story in one go, at times several chapters a day, and once something is down on paper I usually do not have to change it much, at least most of the time. Although the stories unfold in my head as I write, I tend to write my books in a chronological order, which means that I start at the start, then write the middle, and as mentioned often leave the ending relatively open until the very last. But of course I also have to make constant adjustments to the story, for example if I add unforeseen characters or develop a new twist to the story. This means that I have to go back through the whole story to make sure everything fits together and that there are no contradictions. Often this is the most difficult part of writing, making sure that it all fits together neatly, even if some parts of the story were written months ago. I only write in the mornings and early afternoons and write at most 2 to 3 hours a day. There are many days when I don't write at all, but when I'm on a writing spell I can easily write several thousand words a day in rough draft. So I probably am quite a fast writer, but as mentioned, every writer is different and uses different strategies and timelines to put words on paper. Editing each book takes as long as writing it. While I'm writing, I usually go back through previous chapters and paragraphs several times, altering some bits here and adding other bits there. Once a first rough draft of a book is ready, I then usually read through the whole book over 10 times before beginning with spell checking and final formatting. Several other people also read and comment on my books before I start finalizing them. Finally, what is my publication strategy? With my first book, which is this one here, a children's fantasy story, I worked with a London publisher and was very happy with the end product and their marketing strategy. But then I discovered Amazon Kindle Direct Publishing, KDP in short, and have published all my other books with them since. For many first-time writers, I think KDP is an excellent publishing platform. Opportunities such as Amazon's KDP are really changing the nature of publishing. You no longer need an agent, you don't need to find a publisher, and you are no longer dependent on publishers to market your book. With publishing platforms such as KDP, you are in full control, from production to publication to marketing and advertising. You can publish your book both as paperback or ebook, and as you can see from these books, here's another example of a book I've written recently. I think the books look great, just like any other book you buy in bookshops, with a spine and information at the back of the book. All of that you've got full control over. I won't tell you here how the actual publishing with KDP works, as they have excellent videos taking you through each step. And believe me, if I have understood how it works as a relatively non-computer literate person, anyone will understand how to publish a book through KDP. There is some editorial control at the KDP end. For example, they check the contents of your books for their suitability for publication, but on the whole you can publish anything you want with them as long as it does not offend, threaten people, or incite violence or terrorism. And on these issues KDP are rightly very strict. You have full control over the layout, cover, and how your book will look. I would strongly advise to produce your book as professionally as possible with a great cover. Here's another one. Either using KDP's own cover creator or other book cover software to provide as much frontispiece information as possible. So make sure your books look like real books with a cover page, but also a copyright page. I think that's very important. Also with the date of publication on it, and with a professional layout in terms of margins, headers, footers and pagination. So make particularly sure that the margins, left, right, top and bottom, are suitable to the format that you're choosing. I myself prefer small size books. All the books I've shown you are 12 by 21 centimeters, which is the smallest format that KDP offers, and a glossy finish for the cover. I would say that the glossy looks quite good. It's a little bit more expensive to produce. KDP publishing is free and you can purchase up to 1,000 or even more copies of your own book at a very reasonable price. But advertising through the KDP Amazon platform comes at a cost, and it takes some skill to find the right balance between advertising costs and revenue. Now this is important. Don't expect your book to sell well from the start. It does take a bit of time to find the right keywords to advertise your book and to set the advertising price at the right level. But once you get going, the KDP platform is indeed excellent at letting you know in real time how your books are selling. So check out my books through the other videos on this YouTube channel or find them directly on Amazon. And let me finish by saying that we as authors would not be here without you, dear readers, so I hope that you will enjoy my books and I look forward to seeing your reviews on Amazon.